Okay, I'm reading emails again today. I'm so behind. I will get to them at some point, I promise. So this person, I have not got a name here, but anyway. So she says, or he says, I was wondering if you could talk about death in relation to anorexia, and I don't mean like death rates, etc. I mean the emotions of going through a potentially fatal disorder, the denial of one's condition and the fear of death. When I was sick, I was pushed every thought of it being dangerous aside. Even when I had a heart attack, I wasn't scared at all. But when I entered recovery, I started to be really scared of dying at times. Like I recall going to bed a day after a day of eating, wishing that I would wake up the next day. So anyway, I think I read that wrong, but and this fear would come especially when I started allowing myself to eat and rest. My body would finally feel tired and relaxed, and suddenly going to sleep would fear my heart rate would get slower and slower and I'd actually die. Recently, as I also had a hard time thinking about near-death experiences at my worst and overall fatefulness of it all, that didn't bother me at all when I was actually, she's saying, basically, what they're saying is that they've noticed that when they were really sick, didn't seem to be emotionally affected by the very real threat of dying of malnutrition. And then they've noticed that as they started eating and resting more, they've started to become scared of those things. Super normal. I absolutely went through the same thing. I remember a doctor once telling me that if I didn't gain weight, that I would die. And I remember him saying those words, and my reaction was just like as if he'd told me, I don't know, it'd be like my mum saying to me, we've run out of milk. Or even less, actually, because running out of milk, I'd probably have shit, I can't have a cup of tea. But I didn't even have that. I was just kind of like, oh, that's interesting. That was really sort of my reaction. And even at the time, I remember thinking I should feel emotionally upset by this, but I don't. And that's weird that I really don't care. I don't know. It's like you're telling me it's going to rain tomorrow or something. But even less emotional, because when I was in England, if you told me it's going to rain tomorrow, I'd be really pissed off. So I was just like, nah. Could have been like totally unemotional reaction. That I logged was that's weird. And then I had the same thing as I started to recover, as I started to eat more, started to rest more. I suddenly got frantically scared of that possibility. I got frantically scared that I was so underweight. It just kind of like, it was like I woke up and I could suddenly see what a fucked up condition my body was in and what I'd done to it. And I almost kind of like panicked, like, holy shit. And what I think happens is when your brain thinks that you need to migrate, so in an energy deficit or you're restricting food, death is probably a really near possibility, or at least historically it would be for migrating animals. And if you don't get on and migrate, then for sure you're not going to have enough food, and if you don't have enough food, you will die. And it's like the brain just goes into this shutdown mode of I need to move a lot and eat very little and get to where I'm going. I just need to go. And I've talked before about increased pain threshold. For those of us who have restrictive eating disorders, when we're sick, often our pain threshold goes higher. But I also think that the brain creates this buffer around the reality of death and around really emotionally caring to the state that our bodies are in. It's massively difficult to explain if you haven't experienced it, but if you're watching this channel, you probably have. And when we start to go into recovery, which in migration terms would be like, that would be actually when you arrived to the land of milk and honey where all the food was and you didn't need to migrate anymore, and your body would know that you didn't need to migrate anymore because you would stop moving as much and your intake would be hugely more. You'd suddenly start eating a lot of food, which is what most of us do when we decide we're going to recover. We start eating a lot of food and we stop with the compulsive movement. Then the brain goes, oh, we must have arrived. Therefore, I'm safe. And therefore, I can be vulnerable to knowing how fucking sick I am and how much I just really need to eat and rest. Therefore, I can be vulnerable to knowing that I'm in pain. Pain threshold tends to go down again, and you stub your toe and you kind of like spend more time sitting on the floor nursing it, whereas before when you're really sick you'd stub your toe and you'd just shove your trainers on and go for a run anyway because you're like that. And then for many of us, while we're in that, that's suddenly concerning because that change is concerning. I remember things like that. I'd hurt myself and then sort of actually spend some time tending to my hurt self, and a part of my brain would be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you don't do this, you just keep going. And then another part of my brain would be like, is this normal? Like, is this normal? Should I be doing this, or should I keep going? It's like, it's really confusing. And the same with the panic around, oh my God, my body's in a complete state, and I really need to sort it out. Even then, when I was starting to notice and be super scared of I could actually die unless I fully recovered, like a part of my brain was being like, this isn't you. You don't care about, like, what are you worrying about? Like, this isn't new, this isn't normal for you. And again, really difficult to describe, and anybody who hasn't had anorexia probably watching this thinks now I'm like a schizophrenic or something who has voices in their head. It's not voices, it's emotions, right? But I'm just explaining that's the duality that can exist when you experience your own brain shifting in the way that it reacts to certain circumstances, and you've been used to it reacting a certain way for a very long time. So whomever wrote that, really good email, very interesting. Many people experience the same sort of things, the same sort of shifts in your perception of yourself and your connection to your own self in recovery. It's a good thing. Keep eating, keep resting.